Awesome. Well, good morning, or if you're listening to this, maybe in the afternoon, good afternoon. So thanks so much for being here. And we're excited this month for the Kennrod Live show to be talking to John. Is it pronounced Dawes?
It's however you want to say it. But
No, I want to say it right.
The family pronounces it Dawes.
Dawes. Okay, awesome. Thanks, John, for being here. He's our number one person that's asked questions. So we really want to give you some recognition over the last few, 6 months, because you have good questions and nice shout outs. So thanks, John, for being here. So we're excited. For the people that don't know John, he's a retired detective in Cobb County. So he has a perspective that we're really interested in. And at Kennrod, we're bringing educational opportunities to people that may not have them. And Kelly is the leader of the organization. So Kelly, just give us a minute of Kennrod, and then we'll jump in and we'll talk to John.
Thank you so much, Pete, and welcome, John. I am super excited to have you here as our guest today. I know that our students and our families, as well as the greater community, will learn so much from your insight, having over 30 years in law enforcement. Kennrod, usually before COVID, we would bring different practitioners into schools to meet with our students and for the practitioners to talk to them about their career journey, as well as give them insight into what it's like to work in their particular field of choice. But thanks to Digital Growth ATL and Pete Kane, we've been given this platform to be able to have Facebook Live streaming and streaming on other social media to be able to bring this out to everyone. So we're just really, really excited for the opportunity. We encourage you to share this information with family and friends alike so that more and more people will be able to gain insight and into the various career fields that we bring forward. So I'm really excited about today. John is a personal friend and someone who has been a huge supporter of Kennrod, and I think we're in for a great treat.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. So John, just, when you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do, what kind of led you to get into, law enforcement and the field, being a detective? What led you to move in that area?
Wow, the big beginning. I was really fortunate to have two wonderful parents when I was a little guy growing up, and I was taught respect. I was taught there are laws, there are rules, there are regulations, and you respect them. There's a reason for them, and they keep everything in place. As a little kid, I remember watching all the investigative shows, and I could name them, but I would age myself greatly by doing that. Not many people would even remember them. But I watched all the investigative shows and enjoyed them immensely. I always wanted to be a detective. From the time I was a little kid, that's all I can remember ever really wanting to be. I respected my parents, and I respected law enforcement officers. I have to admit, there was a little bit of a cool factor too. Because I thought it would be really neat to drive a police car with the blue lights and sirens, wah-wah blink blinks, as we call them in law enforcement, and drive fast and have a big time. And so I was always drawn to law enforcement, even going back 7, 8 years old. That was what I wanted to do. Life took me through high school and starting into some college, and I wasn't old enough yet to be a policeman. You have to be 21. So I was trying to figure a lot of things out. I ended up moving from the state of Ohio, where I grew up, down to Georgia, and finally got to a point in life where I said, okay, nothing else really feels right that I'm trying. Nothing else really feels good as far as a career path. So I'm going to do this. So at 23, I finally put in an application for Cobb Police. That's the agency I selected. That's who I wanted to work for. I was impressed by them. So it worked out. And they hired me October 13th of 1985, way back in the 1900s. And it was the first day that set me into a career that blessed me beyond measure. It was fascinating.
Wow. What was that first year like? I mean, obviously at 23, you're wide-eyed and open to everything. So what was that first year like? All of a sudden
There was so much to
you're
fit in.
police, you're law enforcement.
There was so much to fit in. There was so much to learn. There was so much to figure out. For me, I didn't realize that I was as naive and ignorant as I was until I put a gun on my hip and a badge on my chest and started walking around. And people expected me to be able to answer their problems, their issues, or whatever. So way back then, for the first few months, they cycled new hires in through the radio room to learn a little bit about how calls are received, how they're dispatched. Then I got to ride with each of the detective units, whether homicide, crimes against children, and the burglary units that we had at the time. And that put me around some of the old salty dogs that I learned to really respect for their experience and to glean from as I started my path. But then I went to the academy. You have to, at that time, it was 6 weeks. Now it's 26 weeks. So I'm glad I went through when I did. We did 6 weeks of academy. I rode with a training officer for 8 weeks on the night shift, working from 11 p.m. until 7 a.m. And that was a new experience. But the very first night on the road with a training officer, having completed the academy, we got into 2 chases. We responded to several high priority calls, and I got my baptism of fire very quickly. After 8 weeks, I got my first night solo, and that's intimidating. That was scary, but I felt at home at the same time. So it was kind of a lot of fun. It was nerve wracking at times because of the responsibilities that you have. I don't know how many people who are listening have actually opened up any of the law books, but the amount of laws, the number of laws that we have in Cobb County, Georgia, in the state of Georgia, and federally is overwhelming when you're first getting a look into it and start with it. So it was that first year was very overwhelming to a degree in trying to learn what I needed to do and what I needed to know. But at the same time, man, it was so fun. I just had a blast. I met so many unique people, different stances in life. And I met some people who really had it all going on, and I met some people who were just at the very bottom. And it was all good. It was all good. So it got me some exposure into the court system, and that's a very challenging atmosphere for a police officer. I found out very quickly you better be prepared when you walk in the door. So the first year was a lot of learning, a lot of fun, and humbling because of the power that falls on a law enforcement officer, and learning how to make the right decisions and do things the right way.
Well, what about like how long did it take you in the first part of your career to feel really comfortable and confident that you could react based on, the experience factor? Was it a year or 2 or more?
That came in stages. The best way to answer that is after about a year or a year and a half, I realized and experienced what I knew all along, and that's I wanted to be on the investigative side of law enforcement. driving fast, first on the scene, blue lights and sirens. It was a blast, and people talk about how fun it is, and um, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But what I found is that when I went out on calls as a uniformed policeman, and for instance, a burglary of a residence, I didn't want to stop at just taking a report. Um, and filing a report and telling people, I hope we find your stuff. I like to go out and start following up on it and see what kind of evidence I could discover, see what kind of suspect information I could develop. And it was the continuing follow up on all the calls that I went to that was what I saw as a challenge. I like solving challenges. I like getting answers to problems. So I was comfortable in the uniform job, knowing traffic law, knowing a lot about how to investigate a traffic accident, being the first responder to any type of call you can imagine, whether it was a house fire or a traffic accident or domestic violence situation. It didn't matter what it was. I felt comfortable in about a year and a half, my ability to handle it on my own. So once I got into the investigative side of law enforcement, then that took a period of probably 2 to 3 years to feel like I could handle whatever came in by phone or by radio at that point.
What would you say? I mean, a young person, and that's where a lot of times Kennrod's connecting in the community. What would that decision process be like? Like, what do you think a person should think about if they want to pursue a career in law enforcement? First, from just law enforcement, and then the detective side, because I think there's two different paths there. Just share with us your perspective and insight into that.
I would tell young people today the same thing that I've told them all through the years. If you want a career that is both challenging and rewarding, consider law enforcement, because it's been a blessing to me for 35 years of my career. Every day presenting new challenges. One of the things that is unique to law enforcement that a lot of these young people would be excited about is your job is not monotonous. There's no boredom. Every minute can bring you something that you've never experienced. Every minute can put you on the spot where you absolutely fall back on what you've been trained to do. It becomes automatic in many ways. It's a challenging profession to be in. It requires the right mindset. It requires a kind heart, and you won't hear that out of many cops. But you better have a kind heart and feel for people. But if you enjoy a new challenge throughout your day, law enforcement is one of those professions that gives you that like no other profession that you can be involved with.
We're not able to hear you, Pete.
I do a little coughing occasionally, and I mute.
I don't read lips, though.
What do you think, like, for what kind of skills are needed to be a really good detective?
Number one, and probably some people would disagree with me, but I think to be a really, really good detective, you better have a big heart. What drove me on the investigative side of law enforcement for so many years, and 90% of my career was on the investigative side. What drove me was what I felt for other people. In a homicide investigation, what woke me up early, what kept me going for days on end without sleep, what woke me in the middle of the night was that there were people whose loved one had been traumatically murdered, traumatically injured, sudden, unexpected, loss of life, and those family members who were surviving it or trying to, they deserve answers. And I think that the number one asset for a detective is to have a big heart. The second thing is, I think that the next priority, the next asset would be for someone to accept challenge, because you won't find a more challenging occupation than working in a homicide investigative office. You don't have to have great aptitude for a particular field such as chemistry or science, even though that's where all your evidence is going to be tested. You just have to have an idea of what can be done. But it's a field where you're driven to do things by what you feel inside. Sure, there's a lot of pride that comes from solving a case. There's a lot of pride that comes from a highly successful conviction rate on the cases that you investigated and how you clear them out. But the inward gratification that you receive is the continuing motivator. So it's kind of hard to explain, but you don't have to be a genius. If you are willing to accept challenges, if you find yourself, especially as a young person, and you enjoy hearing about somebody else's situation they're going through, and you want to help them find an answer, you want to help them solve a problem, you've got investigative skills, and it's something you really should look at.
Well, how important are the relationships that you build in the community, and how that has helped you, over the years?
I've always been a big fan of community policing, and I think that law enforcement agencies have kind of gotten away from that to some degree, because the funding's not there for most agencies, and their manpower is down. So, but a law enforcement agency is as good as the officers that work there and how the community receives them. The community is of vital importance. You're going to have in every community those who like the police and those who don't like the police. So you have to reach out, and you have to be the contributing factor that makes that a good situation. I'm proud of the fact that during my career, I was kind of known for what I did, and I could go into the communities and talk to people. Parents loved me because I would kind of give their kids some advice to stay along the correct line. And I would quickly stop parents who would point out to their child, "Hey, there's the policeman. I'm going to have him lock you up if you don't straighten yourself up." Man, I hated that. So I would show them, a cop is a regular person. They're good people, by and large, and they care about kids. They care about adults. They want to help any way they can. And so that was the image that I wanted to put out there to the community where I worked. That if they needed to call on somebody, I was as close as a phone. So that's it's hard to overstate the importance of having a good relationship in the community. And the agency where I grew up, the agency I worked in and spent my entire career in, spent a lot of time making sure that we had a good rapport and a good relationship with the community where we work.
How did you, I mean, I can gather from listening to you that, it's probably hard to turn it off, at times because of, that desire to, solve things and figure out things. So what balance did you do? Because I mean, you can't have it on 24/7, or probably there would be some issues there. How did you balance your work with your time off?
I was bad at that. And Kelly can probably tell you, um, I was terrible with trying to balance it out. It wasn't an occupation that I could shut off. It wasn't the cases I was involved with, the cases I was working. I didn't know how to shut them off. So I didn't sleep much. My career, my job, my focus, the call would come in about a homicide that had just occurred, and I would respond, and it was not uncommon not to go home for 2 or 3 days because there's just that much to do. It's that important to somebody to figure out, and so you become your victim. You have to know your victim to such a degree that they are you are them, and that's how you start figuring a lot of things out. And so I developed close relationships with the family members, and I struggled with putting it down during my off days or when I was at home. But that was my choice. I chose not to put it away. I chose not to shut it down because if I woke up in the middle of the night with something on my mind that I could use on a case, I got up and wrote it down. Because if I fell back to sleep, I wouldn't remember it. So I was fully dedicated. And looking back now, that comes at a price for your health. That comes at a price for your overall happiness. And my advice would be for someone considering this field is to be a little different than I was.
Yeah.
Because that was a struggle. There are ways to deal with that I didn't discover early in my career. There are things that you can do. There are activities you can be involved in where you're still a help to other people. You're still involved in something creative. But I played a lot of golf. And that was one thing that I could do because I found it a very difficult sport to become good at. That was something I could do where for 3 or 4 hours at a time, I forgot about everything else I was doing. But I really didn't discover how to do that until late in my career. So I would encourage people who are going into this field, whether it's as a homicide detective or as a crime scene technician, someone working in a lab in forensic analysis, or a uniformed policeman. All of those jobs require your heart and your mind all the time.
Yeah.
But find some other things that interest you and involve yourself in them. And that way you have a better balance than John Dawes ever figured out.
Yeah. That's good advice. I mean, I think that's important, but coming from somebody that's lived it, for people to go in with that mindset of finding that activity that'll pull you away. And I'm a golfer too, so I get up real early, but when I get a little, at the end of the day, daylight savings, I'll go out and play 6 or 9 holes, and it does kind of ground you physically and mentally, because your golf does have a way. You are trying to figure out how you can get better.
Yeah, all the time.
It takes a lot of mental, fun, but it does take a lot of, thinking to be in that position. So
Right.
That's good. Great advice. I mean, I think that's wonderful. So I'm going to, let's take, I don't know how long you've been retired, but when you did retire after 35 years, how was that adjustment? Because you obviously shared with our listeners that you were on a lot.
That was probably the smoothest transition that I've ever been through. I processed it as well as I could. I had a great friend in the Panhandle in Florida who kept after me and wanted me to come to the Panhandle in Florida near him, play golf and enjoy life. And he knew he's never been law enforcement, didn't understand law enforcement, but we were great friends. And so he kept after me for a couple of years. And I was outside on a weekend, and as I remember, it was about August of 2019, and I had been doing cold case for a little bit over 5 years for the district attorney in Cobb County, and that 5 years was the most challenging and rewarding 5 years that I ever could have dreamed. And I was blessed. But I was outside, and I've got two little dogs, and I had them with me, and I just kind of sat down in the yard, and it was a Saturday afternoon. And I'm not old yet, but I was tired, and I just sat down in the grass and was looking around, and I thought, man, it's time. I'm worn out physically, emotionally, and so I spent some time giving it thought. I was extremely proud of what I had accomplished over the years. I survived some horrendous injuries. I met some fabulous people. I sat in interview rooms with some of the most conscienceless, vicious people that you could ever be around in your lifetime. I saw things that nobody else wants to see. I handled things nobody else would want to handle. And I was proud of every minute of it. I found out that you kind of have to be in a small percentage of people to be able to handle all that I have witnessed and seen. But in that process, I felt like I was as good as I was ever going to be, that I knew as much as I was ever going to know, and had experienced more than most people would ever experience. And I wanted to go out while I was on top rather than waiting until I kind of declined. And so I really didn't throw it out there to a lot of people. I just processed it all in my mind, and I made my decision in about 2 months' time that it was time. I spent 35 years completely selfless, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It was time to take care of me, and so I reached that point. I made my decision, and I retired in November of 2019. Haven't looked back. I'm always a phone call away, and I get phone calls from people that I used to work around and people who have taken over the cold case work in the district attorney's office. And I get calls from investigators from other parts of the country just wanting fresh eyes, wanting an opinion, and that is fun. That's fun, and I enjoy getting to try to help people. This just within the past couple of months of dating a woman who one of her comments after a few weeks was I was kind of holding back, waiting to see the mean side. Because how could you have done what you've done without having a mean side? But I didn't get that. There's most of the policemen that I have encountered, that I've been around, overwhelmingly most of the people want good, positive, peaceful interactions every day. They want their arrestees to be compliant. They want everything to go smoothly. They want the best of things in all ways, and they want to go home in one piece to their families after every shift. I went through a lot in my career. I came home hurt a lot, but I made it home every night. So it came time for me to kind of sit back and maybe be selfish a little bit and take care of me. So that was my decision process.
Awesome.
Pete, let me interject, if you would, for just a second. So my students, Kennrod students, particularly those at our partner schools and our school community, you all are very familiar with my story. And I just want to be able to share today that it really, you've seen me smile throughout this live streaming because I feel so grateful for John Dawes. And you've heard me talk about my story, losing Kennedy in 99 and losing Rodney in 2000. And just to be able to add to what John has said, I am one of those people who John cared for, could not rest until he found the person who killed my Rodney. And when I met John, he came to my home and told me that Rodney had been killed. He was the detective on the scene. That's how he and I met. And also at that time, John conveyed to me that he would not give up until he found the person who killed my Rodney. So I'm saying to you, you just never know how life brings people together.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a recipient of what John has described in terms of how he has approached his work. Because it was 14 years after that he actually made the call to me and said, remember when I told you I wouldn't give up until I found the person who killed Rodney? We've got our person. And that is huge. That speaks to someone who is genuinely passionate about what they do, who really cares about the connections that they make with people, and who's really diligent in their work. And that takes not only a skill, but the heart for the work that they do. And that's what John has been describing here today. And so whatever it is, whatever career that you decide to do in life, it is so critically important that you do something that feels like you're meant to do it. Yeah. Something that gets you inspired to get up every day and you want to do it no matter what. And when you look back after 35 years, you feel so fortunate that you've been able to touch the lives that you have. So to you, John, I just want to make sure that I convey not only to you directly, as I often do, but to our listeners today, the importance of doing work that you love and that you're passionate about, and something that's truly going to make a difference in the lives of others. That's just so important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kelly. I mean, you'll know it when you just can't wait to get up.
You can't wait to get up and get at it.
I was one of those oddballs that smiled on my way to work.
Wow.
If you smile on your way to work in traffic around Atlanta, you're doing the right job. You're doing the right thing. And Kelly, I've told you before, you're the most incredible lady that I've ever met in my life. You're amazing. I don't understand how you're as amazing as you are, but these kids with Kennrod they're in a situation that is of great benefit to them, and I hope they all realize it. And when I first saw Kyle, he was a little 5-year-old kid, and when I saw him on here, a month or two ago, he's an amazing young man who's really, really got it together, and I congratulate you. I congratulate him too, but I congratulate you on your dedication to being a parent, on your dedication to kids, on your dedication to education. And the whole time on October 6th of 2014 in Richland County, South Carolina, when I had my eyes on James Randolph, all I could think about was trying to bring you a smile. And that's what a successful career is doing the right thing, knowing where you belong, and enjoying every minute of it.
Totally. No, I totally agree. And I don't know. I know say 20 or so people in law enforcement. And if I had to say a characteristic of them is the heart. I have a good friend. He retired from the FBI. And before he went to the FBI, he had 10 years in law enforcement up in DC and in Richmond. And, we were talking the other day, and he now has a security position, for one of the major banks. But he says, man, I miss it. I miss it. I miss the people. I miss, the challenges that come with what you just described is solving things for good people and bringing people to justice and the whole part of that process. He says, I got to get back into it somehow. And he gets a call from some of his ex FBI to take on a case or two, and he says the adrenaline just starts to go, and he goes,
John still describes that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even in retirement.
That's when I get calls about cases from people in Cobb County, from the district attorney's office, when I get calls from other agencies and they just want to go over a case. That's exciting for me. I like that, but I can stop there now. The most, I think the most significant thing that I can bring up for how I was blessed in my career is, COVID. There's not much going on. People are still in many parts of the country pretty quarantined compared to where I'm at. And it's brought about some seclusion for a lot of people. And this past Christmas, I was at home by myself with my dogs, and I heard from brothers and sister and my daughter and a few other friends here and there. And I heard from 8 different family members of cases that I worked, and that tells me everything I need to know about the amount of effort that I put in and how I helped change some people's lives. I can't think of anything else I could have done in life where I could have made such a significant difference in the lives of so many people that I touched over the course of almost 300 homicide cases that I was involved in. So I was blessed to get to do what I did.
Yeah, after listening to you, I have a perspective that I think is important to realize in your position is like you did touch so many people's lives. And we always want to go into what we do with purpose. And so that purpose, you got to find it because it does have a lot to do with waking up with a smile on your face and going and doing what you love to do. But I think the younger people of today, to hear this, I'm sure they're going to have a different perspective than they might have had. And that's good. I mean, I love that you're taking us through, many things that you experienced, and your advice and your insights and your reflection is very, very helpful for young kids today. Because we do need people like yourself to get in and be a part of law enforcement. I mean, we know without laws, we're in trouble. And
Yeah, it's there's a lot of negative publicity about policemen in the past couple of years, and that's sad to me. There are a few bad apples in every career field, but it's time for more good people to stand up and want to do it. And it takes the right person. And I think that throughout my career, I saw that policemen kind of police themselves and their brotherhood, unlike most other career fields. And it's just a time where we've got to realize what a police-less society would look like.
Yeah,
you don't want a society without policemen.
Nope.
And now we're in times when some of these young people who are associated with Kennrod and who are getting to touch and hear and see and feel all these things that are out there and available to them. I hope that some of them will consider law enforcement as a career, because we really need them. There's not a If they were in trouble right now today and needed a helping hand from somebody, there's not a policeman out there that would turn away from them. So they need to. Hopefully, they'll consider law enforcement as a career field. There are many options available within law enforcement to do. And I would encourage them, if they want something that is challenging and rewarding, different every minute of the day, every day, jump in, check it out.
Yeah, that's great advice. Just for the listeners too, if you know people that, want to help support Kennrod, I just put up there the information, because what Kelly and her group are doing is bringing people like John to the younger people so they can get a better perspective, and opening up opportunities for younger people to remove some of the barriers that might be out there, and opening up those possibilities. Because I think your career is a lot of years, and you want to as early as possible find something that you truly enjoy, that you're passionate about, and you have a purpose. So just reach out to Kelly, the number here, the email address. If you'd like to help support them, love it. Come on. We're also looking. I'll put a plug in there. We're also looking for a digital person to help us here at Kennrod. So we'll teach you everything. So if you're a young person and you want to learn a skill, I tell my daughters, anybody to listen, get skills, because you got skills are what help. And the better your skills are, the more the market needs it. So Kelly's needing a lead person for handling all the digital marketing for Kennrod. And we'll train you, and we'll do everything we can to get you exposed to things, and you can help to support Kennrod. So
Thank
awesome.
you,
Share this with
Pete.
us.
Thank you, Pete. Digital Growth ATL. Pete is our facilitator and our navigator on this live streaming. So I can't say enough, Pete, how much we appreciate you for doing this, for this in-kind donation to Kennrod. It really means so much, and it's allowing us to expand our audience. I really appreciate you. Our board members appreciate you. And to Mr. John Dawes, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today and to share insight with us on your career in law enforcement. And you're exactly right. We do need to spread the word about how important it is for us to have law enforcement officers, and to give students insight on how they can make a career out of it, and be able to work in various fields. And I don't even think you mentioned the fact that you, at the latter part of your career, you started the Cobb County Cold Case Unit. You led that department and made sure that any cases that were not solved in the department over the course of a lot of years, that you all focused on that. And your team was able to solve a lot of cold cases during the 5-year span, one of those of which was the case of Rodney Castlin, which I'm so grateful. So I just want to say again, students, continue to focus on your goals. Do the things that you need to do in school to make that possible, and take advantage of every opportunity there is for you to learn more and for you to decipher what type of career that you're interested in. And be passionate about it, as John so eloquently stated today. Thank you, John, for being here. And thanks to everybody for your time each month, for taking part in our call. We are going to see you again next month. We have a very special guest that's going to be coming to us, Mr. Marshall McCade. He is a multi-store Chick-fil-A owner. And for those of you who are interested, I know you love eating Chick-fil-A. I know that. But if you're interested in entrepreneurship and want to learn more about owning a Chick-fil-A and what that experience is about, look for us in March 24th to be exact, same time, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
I'll have to let my granddaughters are 7, 4, and 2. They have never eaten at a McDonald's, but they can be seen at Chick-fil-A several times a week. And
We're
I'll say,
excited.
come on, you got to try McDonald's. No, I don't like it. I said,
Yeah.
I like Chick-fil-A.
We are all going to learn a little bit more about Chick-fil-A next month.
It's awesome. Well, fantastic. Well said, Kelly. Thanks so much. John, thank you. We just totally enjoyed having you on the show, and your perspective just knocks it out of the park, if I could use a sports term, or maybe in golf, it's like driving it right down the middle, right in the sweet, a long drive. But yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate you very much. And thanks for what you did over your career in the Cobb County community and the people you serve. We do appreciate you.
It was an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete. Bye,
You're welcome.
everybody.
Bye now. See y'all.